Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla, President of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, who's sponsoring this event. This is our 26th episode, and we're so proud to have with us as our guest Dennis Mills, our newly elected Director of Calaveras County Water District. Dennis, welcome.
How you doing?
Tell me, Dennis, a little bit about yourself. You have a management background, more so than many of the other people I've talked to, and also you have a family, and you I think you live in Vallecito.
That's correct.
Do you have kids at home now?
No kids at home. My whole career started with the corporation I was with back in the 80s, and it's kind of interesting to watch the progression of your career as you move forward. In 1988, I ran for the Calaveras County Water District against Dennis Dooley and then C.T. Johnson, who was the incumbent. And Dennis, unfortunately or fortunately, beat me by 5 votes. But I decided that it was time to maybe head out and get that career path going. And so I worked very hard to develop a management skill set that was an advantage to the corporation I worked for. And nationally, there is a high level of accountability that's required. You cannot be unethical. You cannot do things that are below standard for very long and survive in that world. So as I concluded my career with the company, I was responsible for a crew that was running from Sacramento to Los Angeles. And that also included an additional responsibility because I was doing so well at it that they gave me the responsibility for handling training from Denver to Honolulu.
What did the company produce?
It didn't produce actually anything other than providing a service. We were a service industry for Whirlpool and Sears Holdings.
Okay.
And so all of the vehicles that we had under ours, so I'm fully familiar with fleet management and GPS coordinating and real-time, what I call time-sensitive handling of a business model. That business then required, as I saw it, a need for a better relationship with our customer base. So they asked me to put together a customer relations skill training for our service industry, which I then promoted and went out through the western states, not only training, but training trainers how to train it.
Oh, boy.
And putting that together, they started to then look at, well, what else can we do with this? And I took it a step further and I said, you know, if we would just find a better way to handle maybe repairing the high voltage sections of microwaves. It might sound rather sinister, but it's not. We found very quickly that, for instance, the staff in the field didn't know how to read meters. Or if they could read meters, the meters weren't functional, and they didn't know it. And so when we completed that training skill set, we found that we were saving about $4 in parts per call. Well, when you put that out over a large area of, say, California and Arizona and Nevada, it adds up to a lot of money very quickly. So they asked me then, what else can you do? And I said, well, what about looking at refrigerators? With the new Puron gas coming out, which is a different type of Freon that we've had before, it's 1/10 the size of R12, for instance. How do we properly diagnose a sealed system? And taking that, then, we also recognized we were realizing a very significant cost savings when the people understood how to properly handle the product. Then we got involved with Pacific Gas and Electric with the Check Me program, which was to go into customers' homes and actually identify under or overcharged sealed systems, and by doing that, saving the customer money and saving PG&E money.
I understand you got more skills than that. I think that this afternoon we pulled you away from repairing a car.
Yes.
Yeah. For
yes.
a neighbor.
Yes, we were working on repairing. I do that kind of work. I mean, if there's somebody that needs some help, I'm more than willing to help take care of it. But beyond that, then, we moved on to the new front-load washers, which were a pancake-style 16-pole motor, which is flat. And using that technology, which is developed by Samsung, LG, and the other product lines, we needed to have everyone with a thorough understanding of how that system worked. So we were able to actually tear them down and take everybody through a step-by-step diagnosis. So Whirlpool liked it so well, they stole the training from us. and we did get some coordination with Whirlpool as they were developing their products to get feedback from the field to know what it was that they were doing right and wrong. And maybe do some product updates or changes. And Maytag got involved. We had a number of sources that we were working with directly. But as I was continuing to do this, remember, I still had a crew that was running Sacramento to Los Angeles. So how do you do that? Well, if you are running a well-rounded crew and you've got them managed well, then they will work without a whole lot of what I call babysitting. And the result was as I retired, out of 187 in my position, I retired as number 3.
Oh, wow.
So I left on the top of my game. And by doing that, I was able to coach other managers because when we looked at budgets, we were looking at line item accountability, which meant that you had to, if you were doing a good job on that line item, you were expected to help other people and bring them up to your level and coach them. So I have the certifications for being a mentor and a trainer. And I've also was part of the county fire department here when it was active, which meant I was on strike teams and was involved in instructors. I was part of the original Training Officers Association within Calaveras County when it first came into being.
That's quite a background.
So it is quite a varied background, but it's been fun, and I have no regrets.
Can you cook too?
Yes, I can. As a matter of fact, I had a restaurant on the south side of Chicago, and I had
a restaurant in Copperopolis.
My staff was 130. And we had 2 kitchens and a banquet hall at Sat 500, 2 dining rooms, and a show lounge. It was back when we had discos. I had a discotheque that was part of my business, and 8 incoming phone lines, and very, very successful at it. But
if you can run a successful restaurant, you can do anything.
Yes, it's a very high-intensity type of business, and it requires leadership, and that's a skill that oftentimes is missing. You cannot train people to be leaders. They either are or they aren't. And what is a key component to a leader? It's someone who can take a decisive action when the action's needed and know that they are right.
Yeah.
And it's not a matter of them second guessing what they're doing or why they're doing it. Everybody will then rally around them and have confidence that they know the course of action is correct. So I always prided myself on being able to have great leadership. And I told my staff many times, because I'd take them to breakfast, I'd take them out to do various things together, create that unity. And I said, gentlemen and ladies, you may be sorry when I'm gone. Enjoy what's here. And even to this day, I've been retired now over 2 years. I still get my kids, and I call them my kids.
How old are your kids?
No, my kids being my staff. Still calling me wanting me to go to lunch, wanting to check in, wanting to see how things are going. So they still have that bond and that tie, which I consider it's a great accomplishment to be able to do that.
Did during the years since 1988, I imagine you have been watching what's happening with the district, and I notice over the years there's been a lot of turnover on directors with the district. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's just we're continuing to select people as politicians, and we're not thinking about them for their skill sets, and having the ability to kiss babies and slap people on the back and shake the right hand does not oftentimes mean that you're going to get the right person for the job. And these are jobs. Yeah. These require people to have some sense of responsibility to the ratepayers or to the people that elect them. Yeah.
Both.
Absolutely. So I take, as I've been watching, there's been many times that I've come before that CCWD board and I've said, I've told you about AD 604. I warned you about what you're doing with this other project over here.
What's AD 604?
AD 604 was Assessment District 604 that the bond was defaulted on. Okay. That they're still struggling to get taken care of some 10 years later. More than once, I've gone before their board and said, "I told you so. I warned you." Because I was watching what they were doing and realizing that these steps can't continue. Go back to the North Fork. $19.2 million of an initial amount given to the district, and I watched them literally giving it away in the forms of loans and grants, and I don't think even today they could account for the dollars that they gave to who, and what actually did they get back, or if they did get anything back.
Yeah.
So from that point going forward to today, these financial issues have been a continual problem for them. From 2005, when they had over $45 million in investments, to today, when it's down to $23 million, how do you explain the loss of $22 million worth of value in your investment package?
Now, this money is seed corn for the repairs of the pipes for the future years. Is that correct?
That's part of it. That's absolutely true. And another part of that is that the payments that we're getting from the North Fork project, or the payments that we're getting from investments right now at CCWD, where is that money being put to use? And the directors in the past have been proud to say, we've used it to keep the rates down. Well, what does that do for our future?
By eating the seed corn.
Yeah. How do we develop an infrastructure? I talk to people with other agencies, and they say along the Highway 4 corridor, you don't have a water problem in terms of the supply. You have a water distribution problem. And you sit there and you look at McKay's and Hunter Dam and the problems with Hunter Dam, which are going to bite somebody here in the near future. It wouldn't take much to literally just tear that whole area apart if something were to happen to the flumes again, or something were to happen to McKay's tunnel tap. We're in a very precarious position with those systems as they are now.
So the solution would be to modify or rebuild those facilities?
Well, eventually something's going to have to be done with Hunters, because as we know, the people that have looked at it through the dams and said it's an old dam. It goes back into the 1800s. And what maintenance has really been done on it, and how do we maintain it? Or we just take it apart and build it again? I know that's a UWPA project in essence, but it's still, so that's another thing that comes up in my mind is that we've got these various agencies through the county, and how much time have any of these agencies been spending playing well together?
Yeah.
It's embarrassing that we can't work together and find common solutions. And whether it's the Murphy's Union people, who I think are very diligent in what they try to do, the City of Angels with what they try to do, even here in San Andreas with the Public Utility District, they're trying to be diligent with their money and with their assets.
Yes.
But I don't see CCWD as stepping in and saying, how can we help? How can we make this a better county together? Because we have to share a vision here.
Yeah.
This is not just a one-man band. And if we're going to go in and create animosity and create discord amongst the various agencies, how do we ever expect anybody to want to work with us? We don't.
It seemed to our taxpayer group formed a water committee. And for, I guess almost 4 or 5 months now, we've had some pretty good talent in that committee. And it's always a handful of people.
Sure.
Anytime, volunteer organization. But it seemed to be true that there seems to be a crisis of purpose, meaning that it's not clear what the purpose of that district was. We felt that the ratepayers would like to see a purpose of providing abundant, clean water at reasonable rates. To us, that seemed to be very clear. But that's not what's involved in the political part of this.
That's correct.
And so we have a strange animal. We have partly government. It's a state agency, water agency controlling the county, and it gets tax money. It's elected by the public, who are sometimes or many times not ratepayers at all. And then we have the approach to the ratepayer is almost like to a serf, to somebody you expect to obey.
Okay.
And the feedback from ratepayers is a horrible, seemed to be, at least to me, a horrible communication process in previous years.
Yes.
Which led to a sincere effort to overthrow the last rate increase.
Absolutely.
You couldn't get it. And so anyway, we're thinking that the problem is not, we don't know if it's personalities, but we think it's partly systemic. And so we need to have it be looked at in terms of principle and purpose.
I'd like to speak to that, because what you have to start with is the mission. What is the mission statement? And you just explained it. You said it.
Yeah.
But then we have to step back and say, how do the policies that the district has in place answer those questions? And any policy that does not meet the criteria of that mission statement needs to be rewritten because it's a conflict.
Yeah.
Well, my point is if you don't like the mission statement because you want to treat the ratepayers as serfs, then you need to rewrite the mission statement.
Right.
Tell us what you really are wanting to do.
Right.
Because I think in the past I've watched too often that this has become a money-making machine.
Right.
And more interested in how many dollars can they scarf out of somebody than actually taking care of the ratepayers first.
Yeah.
And being sure that fiduciary responsibility is met. And to that end, if you look back, when I walked those many thousands of homes during the election, I saw it over and over again. These people are not happy.
Yeah.
And they're not happy exactly for the reasons you talk about, is that they feel that they're in an adversarial relationship with one of the primary providers of life for them in their world. And it shouldn't be that way. That's why when the opportunity came about to protect the brand, and I spoke to that back in June of this last year, where I said that it's important for us to always have the best relationship we can with our people, our staff, as well as with our ratepayers and others around us.
Right.
And how does that happen? And that's where Joel Mesker came about.
Right.
Because I felt it was important for us to have a single point of contact within that district, so that we don't get convoluted messages from various people speaking in behalf of the district, when really it has to be well thought out. And everybody's feelings and thoughts have to be taken into consideration.
Now, Joe Mesker was brought on as a public relations officer for the Water District, and he also happens to be a host in not this particular program, but he has his own program on public access TV.
Well, I see he's still learning. It's trying to wrap your head around everything that the district does is a complicated process. But I think that if anybody can do it, Joel he'll put it all together and make it happen. That's why for me, over the last 90 days, it was important for me to take the time to look at every publication that CCWD had on their website. Right. That means the Water Master Plan, the Urban Water Plan, as well as the Watershed Management Plan. And when Cliff Edson went out and he started proposing the Watershed Management Plan that he had thought of, I was at just about every meeting I could go to not just read it once, but see it twice, see it 3 times, and really understand what it was. I've spent the time going back to 1961 with every order from the state regarding water rights. I've taken the time to review all of the court cases that have gone on with CCWD over the last 10, 12 years. All of those things are preparation for where are we and where do we want to go. And if you don't know the history and you don't know the past, you're going to stumble back into it whether you like it or not. And I don't intend to stumble back. I want us to go forward. And going forward means responsible, being accountable for what we do. If we're going to pay people to do work, we expect the work will be done in the way that it's requested to be done, and nothing more, nothing less.
Does the district need the tremendous amount of money it collects? It just seems like, how can you spend that money? What do you spend it on?
Well,
the pipes are in the ground already.
It's, as I spoke in the time when I was running for this office, I said that this is a crisis, it's management by crisis right now.
Right.
And that also meant that the staff generally was in a protectionist or defensive mode.
Right.
They're no longer wanting to reach out and to band together as a group. They're more interested in how do I keep my job.
Right.
And that's a very tough area to be in, and I really feel for them for having to go through that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need to step back and stop managing by crisis.
Right.
What does that mean? That means that we need to have a bulk purchasing on inventory. We need to have some anticipation of inventory needs.
Right.
We need to have our assets identified and be able to be checked every once in a while, like every 6 months randomly, to be sure that they're still where we expect them to be.
Right.
It includes GPS coordination on the vehicles, and that's not negative. I know from my staff in my past that they don't want to be spending their time driving down the road. They want to be spending their time doing something productive.
Right.
And doing things that are productive requires them to be able to be anticipating the need.
Right.
And if you know, and this is one of the problems with the district right now, when we've got all of these different areas throughout the county, can they show me the financial package for each one of those systems and say, this particular system / vehicle is working well, this one is not? And the result is if it's not, what is it about it that's not? And how often are we having to deal with that? And we should be that should be part of an operational plan. Right. That every Thursday or every once a month on Tuesday, sometime during the month, we're going to have to be at that location for this reason. And if we're going to be there, let's put the right person there with the right equipment and the right tools to do the job that needs to be done.
Is there breakthroughs in cost-saving methods that are promoted or information available through the National Association of Water Companies or other industry organizations where we could be up to date, finding the best ways to do things? I understand now they can fix pipes without having to tear them out. They can do it internally.
That's correct. They can blow balloons through them and then they harden within the structure. That's correct. There are many ways to do that. And are we looking at those methods? And are we finding, because if we're not looking to find the most cost-effective way to do something, it's the old adage of it's because we've always done it that way.
Right.
And that doesn't mean it's the best way. Right. When I first when we first got GPS coordination on my fleet, I didn't really think it was a great thing until I noticed, don't mess with my dots. Because I could sit at a screen and I could watch where those dots were. And if I had somebody that was somewhere where they needed to be but they weren't quite there yet, I could even determine that they'd gotten into an accident. I could determine that they were delayed at their previous job. Right. And then I could make adjustments accordingly. I had a staff in Sacramento that was taking care of, it was called a call center. And they were taking care of all of my needs, customer interactions, staff interactions, and all of that. And they handled from basically the Mississippi River through Hawaii and up into Alaska. And having that ability to monitor whether or not we are being efficient meant I was changing things, which meant, does it make sense for me to drive a person out of Stockton into Calaveras County every day of the week? When I don't have the call count necessary to do it? Right. Probably not. And so I was constantly making adjustments as to where can I make the best use of my staff? Mm-hmm. And right now I look at CCWD and I'm asking the same question. Do we have the right people in the right spot? And I'm not talking about the field staff. The field staff is I think, doing a great job with what they've got. But we have to review everybody and just say, is our money being well spent for what we're getting?
Is it possible to bring in, of course it's an expense, but to bring in an expert, like an efficiency expert that's an expert on water districts, to study the operation and then come up with recommendations?
Is there such a thing?
I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't heard that either. I've dealt with efficiency experts before.
But it seemed like we had a report on possible improvements and possible areas that do need improvement, And this is not to just come in and criticize everything, but
Right.
to in a positive way, try to make something better.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I wonder if the new general manager could consider looking into that, bringing in that sort of talent.
I think with a general manager, you know, you touched on something, but I'm going to jump to another point because of what you just said, is that you know that I've said in the past that we've micromanaged too much from the board level.
Right.
And I think that that's been a mistake. I wouldn't have tolerated it in private business, and I don't think it should be tolerated in the public sector as well.
I understand that.
That means that directors need to direct.
Right.
I was a middle-level manager. I understand what it's like to manage managers, and that doesn't mean that you do their work. If you have to do their work and take care of their details, then you don't need them.
Right.
You need to move on.
Right.
And I would like to be able to leave the responsibility for efficiency or any other aspects of the business to the responsibility of the manager. He's going to live and die with whether or not he is capable and has the skill sets to do the job.
Right.
It's unfortunate in my world that we provide a $80,000 golden parachute, courtesy of the ratepayers. There's another part of that contract that I mentioned afterwards, because remember, we never, as public, never had a chance to see the contract till after the potential employee signed it.
Right.
That's unfortunate. But in my world, whenever I hired somebody at management level, there was always an additional statement that was added, and that is, and other duties as may be required.
Okay.
Why is that there? Because oftentimes people will say, but it's not my job.
Right.
No, it's all our jobs. We all are going to do this together.
Yeah.
And so I think having that in the contract sets a clear expectation.
So the board would be interested in policy, and operations would be
I
the responsibility of the manager.
I will be responsible for policy
Right.
and not the day-to-day operations.
Okay.
I'm not going to stick my...
That takes a conflict away.
It does. It absolutely does. And I think that when you start to micromanage somebody in that position, you put them on, my politest way to put it is a road to hell. Because you're undermining their authority, you're undermining their ability to do what you're asking them to do,
Right.
and you're leaving questions in the mind of their subordinates and their staff as to whether or not they're capable of doing the job. Now you've destroyed their leadership ability. And that's a no-win situation for anybody.
So in looking ahead, we'd want to see better communication between the board and the manager, and the board not going around the manager.
Yes.
And then we want to, on the reverse, we want to see employees going to their manager, not around their manager, to board members.
I'm very strong on chain of command.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
So
all-
that means that responsibility is clear in the line organization.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Another thing that I just want everybody to understand is that I'm here, and I hope that everybody can really get a grip on it, is if we can start to put the operational model in some perspective of what it should be from a business point of view, we will be able to save enough money to roll the rates back. That's just a given. I've looked at it enough from so many aspects. It's there.
That's good news.
Well-
We're looking forward to that. We're coming close to the end of our session now, and we'd like to thank you for watching. And also, consider going to our website, which is calaveras-taxpayers.org, calaveras-taxpayers.org, and we'll have a copy of this on an email link that you can watch this again, and perhaps it'll be a training tape. Thank you again for watching. Have a great evening.
Thank you.